What's up, Detroit sports fans? Welcome to The Word on Woodward. Today is our debut, and we're going to be giving you all of the Red Wings and Tigers news every Tuesday and Thursday, starting at noon. I'm Daniella, your host. Let's bring in my co-host, Art Regner. I'm really excited to work with Art on this project. Art, how are you doing?
I am doing fine, Daniella. Only 2 cups of coffee today because I'm a little bit amped. I'm really looking forward to this. This is something that has been discussed for quite a while. And what I really like about it is that it's live. It's going to be interactive. We can break news, have newsmakers on. I just think it's really great working with you and Carley Johnston, who is going to be engaging with fans on the Detroit Red Wings Twitch. It's great. I'm excited. I'm going to try to, keep it down to a quiet roar today. Hopefully I'll be able to maintain that, but you never know.
I think you will, Art. I'm really excited to work with all of you guys as well. We are definitely the dream team. And as you mentioned, during the entire stream, Carley Johnston is going to be interacting with our Twitch audience. So shout out to our Twitch audience. I hope you guys are all tuning in. And if you have a question for Carley, make sure that you're asking. And before we get into our show, I do want to remind you guys that we have Hockeytown Trivia today, right after the show. It will start at 2 p.m. And that is on the District Detroit mobile app. So all you got to do is download the app and you'll see the Hockeytown Trivia notification. Super awesome. And Art, I have to tell you right now, you're not allowed to play because you would probably win.
Well, yeah, maybe Hockeytown Trivia. Every other kind of trivia, Tigers a little bit, Detroit sports trivia. After that, I'm just terrible. Unless you have something about like Lou Gehrig or something. I know for some reason, I think it was probably the Yankees with that starred Gary Cooper. God, I'm dating myself, but I used to watch that. It happened just before the start of every baseball season, whether Bill Kennedy or somebody would play it. So I know a lot about Lou Gehrig, but that's about it. Lou Gehrig, Detroit sports. I'm golden. Everything else, not so much.
Well, you're not allowed on there just to give everyone else a chance, okay? So they've got to win. The winner of this Hockeytown Trivia.
Yeah, now I'm down. I'm up. I'm excited for the show. I'm psyched. And now you're telling me I can't even be part of trivia. Well, if that's the only thing that I have to face that's bad during this pandemic, then okay, I'll be cool with it.
Exactly. You got to give the fans a chance to win, Art. They get a really cool swag bag if they do win. We'll mail it right to them. So make sure you tune in directly after the show, 2 p.m. on the District Detroit app. Now, Art, we're going to kick off the show with our Big Three segment presented by our friends at Chevrolet. And this segment is where you and I talk about the 3 biggest sports stories for Detroit sports right now. And the first one that we are going to talk about is the NHL pause and some return options. Now, Gary Bettman did an interview with Fox Business Network just last week, and he talked about how all options are still on the table. Nothing was really ruled in, nothing's ruled out. They've explored a few different options, such as a neutral site playoff organization there where the coronavirus hasn't hit as hard. He didn't really give too much information. It's still a little vague and still a little up in the air. But Art, what did you make of his statements?
Well, I think that first and foremost, they somehow want to find a way to not only award the Stanley Cup this year, I think they want to play games. The Red Wings have 4 home games remaining. I think some way, somehow, they would love to see the Red Wings play in Detroit and finish out those games, for credibility of the league, to make it a valid championship. There's a lot of things going on. With that said, they have to take everything into consideration. I thought that Gary Bettman was really honest. Nothing is on the table and nothing is off the table because they just don't know. Would they have to forego the rest of the season and go right into a playoff? Who knows? I think we're really in uncharted territory. I do think the reason why I'm at this point, because everything seems to be flattening, and I'm certainly not a medical doctor, but if you want to tune into the Red and White Authority podcast, Dr. Tony Colucci and Dr. John Bauer, emergency room physicians. Tony is the Red Wing chief physician. They do a podcast about COVID-19, really informative. Based on what they were saying in that podcast and based on what the national trends are, perhaps there can be some semblance of a startup of the regular season. Red Wings can get back on the ice too, finish out their season, go into the playoffs. And as long as they can have that date next year of starting in November, and, Gary Bettman said that that's more than doable. They won't have an all-star game. They'll just play straight through and go into playoffs. as long as they can uphold the integrity of the league and make sure that they're treating their fans and the players and everyone safe. And I think that they're still hoping, and, this could be wishful thinking. I think they're still hoping to finish out the regular season. When Gary Bettman said, look, we've got 7 teams that are legitimately still in the playoff race and on the bubble that aren't in the playoffs if we were to just end the season and award through winning percentage or where they are in the standings, however that plays out. I think when he says that, I mean, what he's really trying to say is to everybody, we somehow want to figure out a way that is fair to everyone, where everyone will be happy. And again, the integrity of the league is not compromised. And so this is a very difficult decision. I'm certainly glad I'm not part of it that way, but it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. If we can start to flatten the curve and everyone's health is safe, including, players all the way down, everyone in the organization, people like us, what we do, fans that are going to be coming in, how they're going to social distancing. There's a lot of factors that are going to go into it. But right now, if he had his druthers, I think that he would like to somehow figure out how to play the remainder of the season and then go into a playoff format, have the draft a little bit later in the year, whether it be in August or September, then a training camp in October when they would be starting the season, and then bam, playing this beginning of the regular season next year, a month later, in whatever form that's going to take, because we're going to have to listen to, obviously, the CDC and what they're saying. I think that what seems like a very unhinged situation right now, because no one knows what's going on, maybe it'll kind of fall nicely into place. I certainly hope so.
Art, I do too. And of course, as we get these updates, we will be talking about them in the show. So as news comes in, we will definitely be talking about it. For now, we're going to move on and talk about some of the things that the Tigers and Red Wings are doing in the community. And there's a lot of them, but we're going to focus today on the Tigers and their home plate project, which is really a whole MLB initiative where the clubs are trying to fight childhood hunger. And our very own Ron Gardenhire and Matt Boyd made a donation of $30,000 to help kids who aren't in schools anymore and are affected by these school closures, making sure that they do have meals. So it's great to see, like I said, our organizations are doing so much in the community, and this is just one of the things to highlight, but it's really great to see everybody kind of giving back and banding together during this time.
Well, certainly. I think you have to. We're all in this together, and together we're going to get through it. I don't mean to sound redundant here or broken record, but the one thing that has always struck me is that covering sports in Detroit and covering all the teams is that a lot of athletes, when they get here to southeastern Michigan, Metro Detroit area, many of them, unless they're from the region or from Detroit itself or the state of Michigan, they don't really know much about Detroit. They're like, okay. They're almost hesitant because, they've heard a lot of probably negative things like you hear about most urban areas in America. We can all point out the bads of every city, but you don't hear about the good. And then there's suddenly the way Detroit embraces these athletes and it becomes their home. Many of them stay here in Detroit after they're done playing. I am not surprised that so many athletes, Ron Gardenhire, who's been coming to Detroit a long time since manager of the Twins, Matt Boyd has just embraced, he's a Detroiter as far as I'm concerned. And then, of course, you have guys like Dylan Larkin, who's from here, Justin Abdicator from Muskegon, Dylan donating the gloves and $50,000 with his dad, Kevin, who's quite a character. We have to get Kevin on the show, by the way. Kevin, if you're listening, you're definitely coming on the show. You are part of the Word on Woodward soon. Justin and his wife, Julie, giving meals. And, that's another thing, too. Everyone's kind of wondering, what can I do? And I think at this point, the most important thing, and this again was talking to Dr. Colucci and Dr. Bauer, is that if you want to help out, and I think what the Tigers are doing in their initiative, and Major League Baseball initiative, meals and food for hospital workers seem to be the thing that maybe might be needed most. Everything else is kind of a little bit calmer now, and that if you can somehow figure either a food bank or go to a restaurant and see if they're providing meals or whatever is happening, because I think that right now that seems to be maybe the biggest need is that these people that are working really, really long shifts, all the healthcare workers and that are in hospitals, is that meals seem to be a big issue right now because there's so many people working right now and they're working 12-hour shifts. and finding even the time to eat is rather difficult.
It is, and we appreciate all of those healthcare workers. Let's just make sure that's a message right there. You guys are the frontliners here, and you're doing such great things for us. So Art and I can continue to do this show for all of the people that are staying home and cooperating with those rules as well. And we're going to talk about something else a little positive here for the Tigers during this COVID-19 and the season delay. Michael Fulmer underwent Tommy John surgery just over a year ago. And it wasn't really expected that he was going to play for opening day, but it was expected that he might return to the lineup mid-season. Now, Ron Gardenhire is a little optimistic that he might be ready by the time the season opens. And Art, what does that mean for the Tigers?
Well, we're talking about a former Rookie of the Year. Michael Fulmer was, by all projections, just a few seasons ago, going to be the ace of the staff. I mean, when they traded for the Mets for the name forgets me. I can see him right now. Cepedas, like Cespedes. Anyway, then Tommy John surgery. If you can put him in that location with some of the young arms that the Tigers have, Casey Mize, but look at it. If you put him in there with Matt Boyd, who's coming into his own, Daniel Norris, Jordan Zimmerman, if he's healthy, Spencer Turnbull, who I like, you can add a Nava, whom they also picked up, and then you can put in Michael Fulmer, healthy Michael Fulmer. Suddenly, the Tigers' starting rotation becomes pretty formidable, and it all relies on pitching. And if they can stay healthy, if their arms can come back, and if Michael Fulmer can come back and regain some of his form, he's a bulldog. He's going to go out there. He's going to give you everything he has. I think that, hey, maybe the Tigers can surprise some people this year. And if their starting pitching is able to hold up with the addition of Fulmer, which isn't bad, the rotation isn't that bad. And you can put in some of the and they catch a break on a couple of players. Cameron Maben's back. I like that move. I'm always dreaming. I'm a dreamer, Daniella. So I'm looking at, God, wouldn't it be great if one of these young players that they've drafted, just somebody comes out of nowhere, or Candelario becomes, a legitimate third baseman. And, he's kind of an enigma to me, because I think that he has all the tools to be great. And, my big guy, the guy that I'm on the bandwagon right now for, is Riley Green. And, we'll see if they get Thor Laxton, the big power hitting first baseman in the draft. They picked number 1 overall from Arizona State. He's a big left-handed power hitter. Hits a lot of home runs. I think he's left-handed. But he's a power hitter, plays first. Things are starting to come together pretty well. The thing that I really like about this, Daniella, more than anything, is looking at the Tigers and the Red Wings. Even though they're not where we want them to be, I guess, in overall picture of things, but it's kind of exciting to watch a team build from the process. I know Steve Yzerman touched upon this when he at his press conference on trade deadline day. It's kind of cool to say that you can say, hey, I was there. Like I was there on Steve Yzerman's first day, or when Sergei Fedorov walked into the room, or whomever. And, to watch this process, it's kind of captivating. And because we're native Detroiters for the most part, or Detroit sports fans, and we're so into this and so invested in these teams, to watch these general managers and the organizations pull their magic and watch these players develop and grow into championship caliber teams, it's a pretty cool feeling.
It really is. And it's great to see, because Tommy John surgery is no joke, obviously. That's an immense recovery. So it's great to hear that Fulmer is doing so well. And that's our big 3 for today. So I want to thank our friends at Chevy one more time. When our country is faced with adversity, we find a way to get through it. To help keep you on the road, your Chevrolet certified service experts are here and ready to help. Should you require parts, routine maintenance repairs, Chevrolet and its dealers remain committed to your vehicle needs. Visit ChevyCares.com to learn more. And now, you guys, we're going to catch up with Carley, who was with Jonathan Bernier. And this segment is presented by our friends at Meijer.
Welcome back to The Word on Woodward, and welcome to Catching Up with Carley. I'm joined today by Red Wings goalie Jonathan Bernier. How's it going over there in the Bernier household, Jonathan?
Going good. Obviously, some days are longer than others, but we keep busy with 2 for sure.
No kidding. I love following your wife Martina on Instagram. I feel like I get a good glimpse into a day in the life. You guys have been killing the TikTok game. Tell me what got you guys into that.
I have to admit, it's definitely all about her, but I just tag along and we try to have fun with by staying in the house and doing some challenges and stuff like that. But yeah, she seems to enjoy it, so it's fun for her. And we're like I said, you just got to find ways to entertain yourself a little bit.
And I'm sure another thing that's keeping you busy is your two little boys. How fun is it spending this time with them that you wouldn't get if we were still in season?
Yeah, definitely. I think you got to cherish those moments because, even if it's summertime, you're working out, in the morning, come back around 1 or 2 ish, and you don't really, get to spend a full day with them. And obviously now it's been almost a month or maybe more, so. Stop counting the days, but it just I guess like the way I look at it, we're lucky to kind of calm ourselves down, in the busy life and just really enjoy what really matters, and it's family and kids and I enjoy playing hockey with Tyler. Every day we're either in the basement if the weather's not good, or we go outside as much as possible. So. Got in some rollerblades, so we've been practicing on that, and playing a little, playing hockey outside, like I mentioned, pretty much every day.
So I understand your youngest Brady just turned 1, and you mentioned your older son Tyler likes to play hockey. How into it is he, and does he want to be a goalie, or what is his outlook on it?
Yeah, I've been, to be honest, I've been trying for a while, but I quit. I didn't want him to be a goalie, but I think he just, loves watching me, and he just wants to do the same thing that I'm doing. So when I'm doing my workout, he does it with me. He's stretching with me, so it's fun. I try to kind of show him what it takes to be a goalie, and he just really loves it.
I love that. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. A fun fact I learned about you is that you're a helicopter pilot. Can you tell me what got you into that?
A few years back, I was looking at getting my float plane license, and one of my friends had a helicopter at my cottage, so we went on a ride and just fell in love with the freedom that you get and the experience of kind of being risky at the same time. But I just the fact that you can pretty much stop the helicopter in the air and land it anywhere, I just thought it was something very special. So I decided to do my license, and it took almost kind of did it in short period of time after the season last year. It took me about 3 months to get over 60 hours. So I've been a pilot for over a year now.
That's amazing. Now back to your sons. I saw a video of you training with them, kind of using them as equipment. They must be a good substitute for some dumbbells, right?
Yeah, especially Brady, the little one. He's a thick one, so he doesn't. He weighs. He's pretty heavy. So that was before I got my weight in. So I was trying to get some weight, so I used them as a workout, and they loved it. So, but now we were able to get some weight in the house and a bike and things like that normally we have at our cottage, and you got to find a way to stay in shape. Hopefully we can get back on the ice soon, but you just got to find a way to I'm not getting younger, so I just got to train every day pretty much.
I love that. So let's take a pivot and talk about hockey. Do you remember when you first started playing hockey? Did someone specific get you into it, or was it somewhat like a rite of passage in your Quebec hometown?
No, my family were big in skiing, so every weekend they'd go ski. And then my brother, before he turned 4, he asked to switch his ski equipment for hockey equipment, and we're almost 4 years apart. So obviously I kind of followed what he was doing, and I think I just turned out to be a goalie because he needed someone to shoot at in the house or outside. So big part of him, I guess, where I'm at right now.
At what point were you like, I'm going to make it into the NHL? Like you just knew you had the passion and the talent to make it?
That's a good question. I think for me, I always loved playing the game. I wasn't a huge fan of watching hockey on TV, but I think when I turned junior, my first year, even maybe a year before that, when I got drafted first round in junior, I think, then you realize, maybe I got a good chance to make it a profession. And I think from that point on, that's when I put a lot more work into it and dedication. And but I always had a dream of playing in the NHL when I was a kid. But I think, around the age of 15, 16, that's when I really realized that I had a good chance to make it.
Very cool. The LA Kings won the Stanley Cup in 2012 when you were on the team. How glorifying was it to hoist the cup?
Yeah, it was unbelievable. Obviously, I kind of wish at the same time, it's going to sound silly, but I wish I would have won it a bit older. Just because you're so young and you think you're going to do it every year and it's easy, but then once you're in the league for a while, just to make the playoff is a hard thing to do every year. So, but obviously, winning as a young age like this was special, and having my family and my wife with me, it was something special. But hopefully one day I can win it again and for my sons.
Absolutely. And then from there, you went to Toronto, Anaheim, Colorado, and now here to Detroit. What is the journey like for an NHL player?
Some players, I think, probably they're lucky to stay in one city, which is probably really hard now with the salary cap to stay in one city. But for me, I've been traveling quite a bit. But in the same time, I think we look at the positive, and me and my wife, and we've been to some amazing city. Obviously, LA and Colorado was amazing, and but I think we just we don't get frustrated about it. We just kind of enjoy life, and we're kind of fortunate to travel the world pretty much, and getting paid at the same time and having fun. So, but hopefully this we call this our home, and obviously Tyler goes to school here, so hopefully we'll be able to spend more time here.
We hope so too. And it seems that this season has been pivotal for you almost. You've been the starting goalie in more than half of the games. What is your takeaway on your play and the opportunities you have gotten this season?
Yeah, I think every year that you go to a new city or a new team is always hard to gain the trust of a coach. And my last few teams was only a year with that team, so I know how it is, and I knew that by signing, hopefully 2-3 years, which I did 3, was going to give me the chance to kind of earn the trust of the coach, and I was obviously this year was fun because I was able to from the past year to kind of show to Blash what I can do, and I think I'm a goalie that thrive. When I play more, I play better, and after maybe December or early December, he started to play me more, and I felt more comfortable on the ice and in the room. And I think that was really the that's my game. And but obviously, I was disappointing the way that we played all year, not with the standing point, but for me personally, I felt like I had a pretty good season.
With you saying it's been kind of a tough season, how do you bounce back game after game and keep your head right during a season like this?
Yes, some days are not easy, to be honest. I think mentally you get drained, and by not winning, I think that's the tough part, because you work so hard every day to win at the end. But I think from my experience in Toronto, we kind of went through the rebuild when I was there, and I put a lot on myself by winning and things like that. And I think that experience brought me where I'm at today. And I was just kind of focusing on myself and giving my team the best chance to win, and not really looking at the end result. I was really just focusing on personal performance in a way.
That's great. Okay, I have to ask you, what's your favorite part about being in Detroit?
I mean, there's so much, but I think the history and of the Red Wings, an amazing organization for sure, and even where we live, it's such a great area for family and kids and great schools around here, and and obviously the fans. I was amazed, and I think a lot of players in our locker room were amazed at how many fans were there every night to support us, even if we're a last team. I think that showed a lot about our fan base.
Last but not least, do you want to leave Hockey Town with a message?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely miss being on the ice. It's not easy for anybody. We got to stick together and be safe. But yeah, I think that's I think for our whole team, we hope that we can get back in front of you guys and finish the season strong if we can.
Can't wait for the day to see you guys back out on the ice. Thank you so much, Jonathan. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. I hope you and your family stay healthy and continue to have fun during this time.
Thank you, Carley. Be safe.
We'll be back with the word on Woodward in just a moment.
Technical difficulty there, guys. My own fault. I had my mic muted there. Thank you to our friends at Meyer for that interview with Jonathan Bernier. It was great to hear from him and glad to hear that his family and himself are doing well. I want to bring in Art again. Art, when we talk about Jonathan Bernier, which we did a lot, especially the last half of the season, everything was pretty positive. He really made a step in the right direction in his career, and he kept the Red Wings in so many games.
Well, without question, he's the MVP of the team. I don't even think it's close. Detroit sports broadcasters, give the award to him right now. Jonathan Bernier won 15 games and the Red Wings only won 17. That goes to show you how valuable he is. From December on, his save percentage, his goals against were tops in the NHL. I think what was really one of the tops in the NHL among goaltenders. I thought the thing that was really insightful was where he talked about the last couple of stops in his career were only a year. He signed a 3-year deal with Detroit. A lot of goaltenders, they're kind of like left-handed pitchers. It takes a while for them. They develop a little bit later. And I think the security of having a 3-year deal here in Detroit, getting along very, very well with Jimmy Howard. I mean, they're really tight. They got along from day one when Bernier walked into the room. He and Howard had a really good relationship, and that's important. I don't know. You have to get along with your partner. There's only 2 goaltenders on the entire roster, and even though you're in competition, it's a friendly competition where they push each other. Jimmy and Jonathan were able to do that, so I think that he found a home here. He has some security, and after that first year, which was a transitional year, he was able to find his game, and I think that bodes well for next season. For the Red Wings, that they're going to have a legitimate number 1 goaltender who feels good about himself. And I think that, obviously in this rebuild that the Red Wings are going in, you're going to need a top flight netminder. And right now, Jonathan Bernier has given the Red Wings just that. So it's a good story all the way around. Bernier's he's a funny guy. He has a lot of tattoos, but he, he's I'm glad for him because, it's an unknown. He's coming to a new team, even though he signed a 3-year deal, and it's worked out really, really well, not only for him, but for the Red Wings. And, and that's good for all of us.
It is, Art, and like I said, it was great to hear from him. We're going to move on to our mailbag segment presented by Little Caesars. And joining us for this segment, Art, we're going to bring in your partner in crime, so to speak, Dana Wakiji, who is the senior content producer for the Detroit Red Wings. Dana, I, for one, am really, really excited to have you on as our first mailbag guest. I hope you're as excited as I am.
I'm absolutely excited to be with you guys. Hey, it's always fun to talk to you just around the arena, and at least I get to talk to you now because I've missed it.
Yes, I have missed it so much too. Art and I have talked a little bit, but hey, it's good to see you, even if it does have to be virtually, right?
Absolutely. We'll take what we can get.
All right. So in this segment,
Yeah,
we've had some questions by fans. Oh, I'm sorry, Art. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, it's great to see Dana. I'm so used to seeing her every day working in the same room, that little star room area that we have over there at Little Caesars Arena. But, you look good, Dana. You look healthy, and hopefully everything is going well. And it is, as Daniella said, having you on the mailbag as our first guest is truly not only a treat for me, but for everyone. That sounded sincere, I think.
It was pretty sincere. Let's get into some of these questions we've received from fans. And the first one is actually for Dana. So Dana, you've also worked with the Tigers. Do you have any fun or just memorable Al Kaline stories that you can share with us?
Yeah, that was a real tough one. Honestly, when I saw the news, I'm not gonna lie, I did cry because I've literally known Al Kaline since I started covering the Tigers back in 1995. And he was one of those guys who was just always around the ballpark. And so with baseball, it's different from hockey because there's all that time before the game. During batting practice, you chit chat sometimes. So Al was always there. And then down in spring training in Lakeland, you'd always see him wandering around by Alkaline Field and you'd talk to him. And, he was one of those guys who, here he is, Mr. Tiger, Hall of Famer, and he never acted like he was better than anybody. He always would talk to anybody, anytime. And he genuinely, when you saw him, he made you feel like he cared about you and he was interested in you as a person. And he was that way with everybody. It didn't matter if you were like the head writer at Sports Illustrated or you were just the person who was serving the meals at Tiger Stadium or Comerica Park. And I think that's what always stood out to me. And the other thing about Al is every time I'd see him, I knew he was older, but I was like, he doesn't look older. He doesn't carry himself like an old guy. He just walks like an athlete, like he always was. So, and a friend of mine, when we were out in San Francisco back in 2012, during the World Series, his family is from Michigan originally, but he's always grown up in California. But he, of course, knew Al Kaline and follows Michigan and the Tigers and the Red Wings. So he saw me talking to Al Kaline. He said, I love Al Kaline. I've never met him. So I introduced him. And Al Kaline, of course, was so gracious and warm that he still to this day brings it up to me when he sees me on Twitter or Facebook, is like, oh, thank you so much for introducing me to Al Kaline. He's such a wonderful man. And I said, that's exactly who he is, a wonderful man. And we'll miss him a lot.
We will definitely miss him. I have to say, it's unfortunate that I never had a personal experience with Al Kaline, but hearing everybody's stories on social media, it's amazing the impact that he had on the city. And even though I didn't know him, I knew that he was such an icon in Detroit and he will definitely be missed. Art, we're going to move on to the second question. And this one is for you.
All right.
One of the plans that we've seen circulating for the new NHL season, it involves canceling the All-Star game. Would you miss the All-Star game if ultimately that's what happened?
If they have to cancel it because they have to, the schedule is going to be compressed, no. But I will say this. I like this new 3-on-3 format. I think it's really added a nice dimension to the game. I think, skill is on display, and really that's what you want to see in an All-Star game. So I guess I won't miss it. I won't miss the old way when it was, 17-15 or something where everybody was scoring goals. This one is competitive. So and the way that they select the teams, and I kind of like this format. I think the NHL has gotten it right. But overall, will I miss it? I don't think so, because as I said, you're going to hear this a lot from me. I think what all these leagues are trying to do is protect the integrity of their league, make whatever decision they have, however they restart, make it good for everybody. So they have a legitimate champion at the end. The season isn't looked at and has an asterisk, for they only played 10 games or whatever. I know that's an exaggeration. So again, no, I'm not going to miss the All-Star game because I know that the reason that they're doing it is not because the format isn't good and it doesn't work. The reason they're doing it is that they have to fit in their schedule, especially if they start playing games in November.
And Dana, we're going to jump back to you for this one. This one's a little bit of a fun one, so I hope you have your answer ready for it. During this quarantine, what is the best sports movie to watch?
There's a lot of sports movies that I like, and then some that I haven't seen that I probably should have seen. Like I've never seen The Natural, for example, but I have to admit, every time I'm flipping through the channels and I see Bull Durham on, I have to watch it. It doesn't matter where in the movie it is, but I just love that movie. And, even when I was covering the Tigers, anytime you get all the guys out on the mound to talk to the pitcher, I would immediately have to say, well, candlesticks always make a nice gift, which you have to have seen the movie in order to get that. But so I would say that Bull Durham is one that I always like. Then, of course, if you want to get a good laugh, Major League is fun too. And then for the hockey fans, Slapshot, certainly.
Slapshot. I have to say the hockey movie that I've watched during quarantine, I've watched Mighty Ducks 1 and the second one. So I love the Mighty Ducks. Art, we're going to get into this next question here, and I want you both to answer it. But Art, we're going to start with you. Both of our Detroit sports teams are trending in the right direction here, going through the rebuild phase, as we all know. But which team do you think is closer to winning a championship? Is it the Red Wings or is it the Tigers?
Well, I'm going to say the Red Wings because I see Steve every day and I want him to talk to me. No, I think both of them are in pretty good shape. I think both of them are in really good shape, but things have to fall into place. Another one of my favorite sayings is catch a break on a player. I think if you look at the Red Wings and the way the hockey draft is and how many new players they're bringing in, how many draft picks they're going to have this year, and how many they have for next year. And, Steve has, preached over and over and over again. We just need to bring in a bunch of players and hopefully, 2 or 3 of them in each draft work out. I think they do have a lot of young talent on the Red Wings. And I think that, with Steve in charge, who, we know him for the most part as a Red Wing legend, as one of the greatest hockey players who ever, laced him up. But don't forget, he is one of the best executives too in hockey. I mean, when the Red Wings, when he became general manager of the Red Wings, even though everyone thought, well, he's going to come back home. I mean, they weren't just getting Steve Yzerman, hockey player. They were getting Steve Yzerman, NHL executive, who is one of the best. And so I have a lot of faith, obviously, as you can tell, in Steve. I like the direction of the team. I like the way that some of the young guys down in Grand Rapids have progressed. I think you look at a player like Gus Lindstrom, who came up for an audition. He wasn't going to go back to Grand Rapids until the playoffs started in the AHL. We'll get into that a little bit later with Ryan Martin. But I like that. As far as the Tigers, I think, again, if Riley Green could be fast-tracked, Candelario comes through and lives up to his expectations. The pitching staff, some of these young arms come through. I think that both teams can relatively turn it around quickly, become playoff competitive, contending for a playoff spot. It looks like Major League Baseball wants to expand their playoffs. That's good news for the Tigers. And so I think that both of them have a little ways to go. But I like the direction and trajectory of both teams. And I really think that I'm really eager to see, Steve in this draft, what he does in free agency, who he brings in, trades that he's going to make. Because I think one thing we learned about Steve Yzerman this year is that he's proactive. He's not afraid to take chances. And, and I think Al Avila, on the other hand, does the same thing, and I think that that's probably a testament to ownership, who allows both of these gentlemen to run their teams and do what they think is best, and almost an open checkbook, if you will, to make moves. So I really like it.
All right, Dana, how about you? What do you think? The Red Wings or the Tigers first?
That's a hard one to call. Because, like Art said, a lot has to go right. Things have to fall into place. And he was talking about Steve Yzerman. And I said this earlier this season, that what Steve Yzerman really needs to find, and I told this to Jimmy Devellano when we were down in Tampa, he needs to find the next Steve Yzerman. which is hard to do because obviously those don't come around every couple of years. They're generational players. So he needs to find a generational player. Similarly, Al Avila, back in the day when he was with the Marlins, he was the one who found Miguel Cabrera. Cabrera was only 15 years old. If he could find the next Miguel Cabrera, that would be fantastic. But of course, in baseball, certainly you need pitching. So they need the guys like Casey Mize, Matt Manning, those players to not only pitch well, but also stay healthy because health is such a huge part. And same with hockey, of course. But if I don't know which is going to be next, but let's just say a lot depends on who finds that generational player first.
Dana, can you imagine? I mean, both of these teams, like we said, are trending in the right direction, and they're kind of going through the rough times at the same time. Imagine if they were going through the great times at the same time.
Well, we've had that happen, certainly in the past.
Right.
There have been times when we've been playing, preseason games with the Red Wings and the Tigers, or, hosting games at Comerica Park in September and even October. So, and those are some of the best times. And similarly, the Red Wings have had parades when, the Tigers are playing. It's really makes for a fun atmosphere when both teams are doing well, but that's hard to do. But maybe since they're on a similar trajectory, it can happen.
Hey, I'm definitely looking forward to something like that. I'm optimistic that we're going to get there very, very soon, right, Art?
Yeah, I mean, Steve bristles, I think, when you say you got to find the next Steve Yzerman, as Dana brought up. I mean, I've asked him that question before. So, Steve, I'm making an appeal to you right now. Look, you still look like you're in shape. Maybe, I don't know, like half a season, depending on how this turns out. Maybe you come back. I mean, you're in the Hall of Fame. They can't take that away from you. So, maybe Steve will come back and, and show him how it's done. I mean, the thing about in all these games that we're watching, the rebroadcast of games, the one thing about Steve Yzerman is his competitiveness was second to none. His tolerance for pain was second for none. But I think that, the Red Wings, if they can luck out in the draft and the way I think anyway it plays out, they're going to pick in the top 4. They do need that generational player. They, as good as Dylan Larkin and Anthony Mantha and Bertuzzi, and I can go on. There's a lot of list of great young Red Wing players that are going to contribute to this team. Michael Rasmussen, who's learning how to play center. Of course, Joe Veleno, Giovanni Smith. As I said, I can go on and on and on. Philip Aronik. I mean, there is a nice core there. But, the next Steve, if we can't find him, Steve, at least consider it.
So to end the mailbag segment, I'm going to take it on Art's bold prediction that Steve Yzerman is going to make a comeback as a player. Well, we'll see if that one actually happens.
The word on Woodward, we're breaking news. It's news to Steve. He's coming back. But what the heck? We need you, Steve, in the worst way.
Sorry, Dana, thank you so much for joining us today. It was great having you again, the first guest on the mailbag. It was great to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's my honor.
And a big thank you again to Little Caesars for bringing you the mailbag segment. And Little Caesars proudly introduces their hot and ready pepperoni cheeser. You get a large pizza topped with classic pepperoni, fresh mozzarella, and a toasted Parmesan and Asiago cheese crust for just $7. Try our no-contact pizza portal or delivery from Little Caesars. And now into our next segment, everybody. This is Bet You Didn't Know, presented by Motor City Casino. And now in this segment, Art is basically going to have a little bit of a story time with you guys. And let me tell you, from working with Art for, I think it's almost 3 years now, actually. Wow, that's kind of crazy. But Art is full of great stories. He has had some really cool experiences. So I'm going to let him take the floor and share with you some really cool stories.
Well, thank you there, Daniella. I am definitely full of something. I do know that. But one player that I really got to know over the years, and I think was a little bit misunderstood here in Detroit, was Sergei Fedorov. And the reason I think it was, and if anyone saw the Russian 5 documentary, there's a point where it's going to sound like I'm Yzerman obsessed today, where Steve talked about there was a big Russian dinner that they had, and they saw that, Sergei would always describe his Russian dinners as, 8-course meals. One time I was doing the old Ice Time Hockey show on the radio, and Sergey called in and he said, I have time because I'm in between course 4 and 5 right now. And, and he described this lavish meal. So I think the thing about it is that, Steve said, then I started to realize these guys are from a different world. Well, Sergey was really from a different world. Back in 97, a publication hired me in case the Red Wings won the Stanley Cup that year to write a profile piece on Sergey Fedorov. And so it took a while for Sergey to finally commit to it. And I stalked him at his locker. And one day, it's a beautiful day. It's like 75, one of those weird days in Michigan weather that comes out of nowhere. And so I'm sitting there. I go, Sergey, we have to do it. I'm under a deadline. We have to do it today. And he says to me, Art, it's a nice day. And then I said, in not this eloquent way, hey, man, it's a nice day for me too. So he said, okay. So we sat down and we started talking. And the thing that I learned about him is that at 16 years old, he's at home with his parents, both of whom were athletes. And he was a hockey player at that time, but they were talking about him going to engineering school, that he was going to be an engineer. And there was a knock on the door, and door opened up, and they were gentlemen from the Soviet Red Army. It was the Soviet Union back then. And they told Sergey that he was now a member of the Soviet Red Army, and he had to collect some things, not many, and he left, and he became a hockey player, the Soviet Red Army hockey team. He never was a real soldier per se, but that's how he started. Of course, he was on a line with Alexander Mogilny and Pavel Bure, and this was before junior hockey or the World Championships. Before, it isn't like it was today. This is before the development program that started in Ann Arbor, now is in Plymouth for the United States. And so Sergey, started playing, was on one of the best world junior lines of all time. But he told me this story about what it was like growing up. One day, it's a Sunday morning, and there's a knock on the door again, and this is obviously before the Red Army took him away to become a hockey player. And no, there wasn't a knock on the door. His grandfather said that he was going to go out and get a newspaper. So his grandfather leaves, and then Sergey looks at me and rather nonchalantly says, and he came back 12 years later. And I'm thinking to myself, 12 years later, well, being, North American, I'm going, what, did he have a second family? What happened to him? I go, Sergey, where'd he go? Where'd he go? And he looked at me and he got really angry and he said, prison. He went to prison, Art. They just took him off the street. And it really dawned on me at that moment what Igor, all the Russian players, but under the Soviet system, what they really had to go through. He talked about being, having a pair of blue jeans that he wore for years, the only pair that he had, and having tennis shoes. And he did say tennis shoes. He did not say sneakers, the old Michigan way, tennis shoes. He said that he had tennis shoes that had holes in them, and that when the Russian junior team would come over, when he was a member of that, and they would go to play in New York or Los Angeles, and he'd be on these really busy streets, he'd see all these young people like himself that had jeans and were shopping and had nice tennis shoes and nice clothes. And he always thought to himself at that moment was when he decided that he was going to defect. As soon as he could defect, that's exactly what he was going to do. Just because he was playing in an oppressive society, he was on a great hockey team, one of the best junior lines, but he knew that in order for him to get a life and to be the person that he really wanted to become, he would have to, and which he did. He abandoned everything. He abandoned his entire family and came here. Nick Polano, it's well documented at the Goodwill Games in Portland. Mr. Illich brought his plane there. Sergey walks into it, sees Nick Polano there with the newspaper. He goes up. He's rooming with the trainer of the Russian national team for the Goodwill Games. He tells him, look, I'm leaving. And the guy said, okay, I'm not going to say anything. They go, they get into a cab, fly right to the airport, and he's in Detroit. And then the guy who gave him everything, that told Sergei how to, English and all that, was the late great Sean Burr, who, has had great stories about Sergei. So I guess, to wrap this all up, the thing that I think that is, all the Russian players, especially from that era, were always a little hesitant. When you wanted them to do something or you asked them to do something, it wasn't that they said no. It was just they wanted to know why. And, and I never knew that until I talked to Sergei, and I found out that his grandfather was abducted for 12 years off the street. He was in a society where they told him he was going to be a hockey player when he wanted to be an engineer. And, he never saw his family. He was in these barracks 12 months a year and just playing hockey. So as much as he had passion and loved the sport, and he's one of the best players of all time, he still missed out on something. And I think you could see that. And that's a little bit sad, because I can remember talking to Igor about it as well, Igor Larionov. And I said, Igor, getting to know you guys, you're such wonderful people. Why do you hate us? And he said, what are you talking about? I go, well, I grew up my whole life, the Soviets or the Russians, they hate you. They're people, they just hate you. And he looked at it, he goes, Art, he goes, we were told the same thing about you. He goes, that's just politics and politicians. So don't listen to them. I want you to remember one thing, and it's kind of the code I live by right now, is that we're all made from the same material. And, again, and maybe because I'm so dense at times, it just hit me. That hit me, along with what Sergei was telling me about, having blue jeans that he had grown out of, wearing tennis shoes that had holes in them, and then having his grandfather. I mean, for those guys to leave, come here into a free society here in North America, be able to play hockey. And, another thing about Sergei, too, which was interesting, when the Red Wings drafted him, if they knew that he was going to defect or come out, he would not have lasted until the third or fourth round where he was drafted. He would have been picked very, very highly, because I can remember talking to Jimmy D about it, because I knew Fedorov was a great player. And I knew the line that he had played on. I said, boy, he goes, well, they told me, Art, my Jimmy D impression, that, this Fedorov's a really good player and one of the best in the world. And I said, just take him, because they thought that he was going to come when he was 30 years old. The Soviets had a system in place. That's why Igor and Fetisov were left. By the time they were 30, they said, well, they've given us everything they can. They can go over to North America, although they had to give some of their money, except Sergei, because he defected. But Igor had to give some of his money to the Russian Hockey Federation. Very, very, very corrupt system, to say the least. But Sergei was able to, defected. I mean, he defected and came over here. That by far was one of the best things that happened to the Red Wings in the era that we just saw, where they won the 4 Stanley Cups. Steve and Sergei were centers. Arguably 2 of the top 5 centers in the entire world were on the same team. I mean, pick your poison. You want to go against Yzerman's line, you want to go against Fedorov's line, and then when you put them together, holy mackerel! That was just poetry in motion, so to speak. So I guess, and I know I'm so hyped up and so excited about today's show that I'm going to calm down a little bit. Okay,
Art,
I'm just going to say
that's a great story.
Sergei Fedorov, without question, had the guts to walk away from a system in his family. And I think because of the way that he was treated, the way he saw what happened to his grandfather. And I think that, when you talk to him and you sit down, he's a very thoughtful man. He young, and, he had all kinds of, a lot of emotion, a lot of things were always going on inside his mind. But I think all the Soviet players felt that way because of where they came from. Once they came here, they finally had a comfort level. He was able to do what he wanted, which was excel. So, hopefully, if you can follow that at home, that's my little story about Sergei Fedorov.
It's a great story, Art. And I think those kind of stories are the best ones, because we're so spoiled with having watched really all of the Russian 5. That's the side of it that we know. So we don't really get to see the behind the scenes and what it was like for them to get here and to be what they were. So I think that was a great story for the Bet You Didn't Know segment presented by Motor City Casino. Again, thank you to our partners at Motor City for bringing us this awesome segment. And now, Art, I think talking about Sergei Fedorov and some of the Red Wings history brings us to our next segment, which is Downtown Hockey Town, presented by Labatt Blue, except we're going to fast forward to present day. Steve Yzerman, our general manager, was officially named general manager of the Detroit Red Wings just a year ago on Sunday. It was the official 1-year anniversary for him. So we're going to take a look at the year in review. Art, to kick this off, I want you to kind of summarize how you think this first year went for Steve Yzerman as general manager of the Detroit Red Wings.
Well, I haven't talked about Steve enough in today's show, so I would
know.
say
I
this.
wanted to butt in and say that you're going to get your chance to talk about Steve, Art. We have a whole segment on him today.
I mean, it's almost embarrassing at this point. I would say this, that Steve's first year was pretty much, I think, what he thought. He told Jeff Blashill at the beginning of the year, I'm not going to judge you by our record, because he knew the record was not going to be good. I'm going to judge you on player development. And I think several of the Red Wings, took some steps forward this year under Blash. I think if you look at it, he obviously wanted to make a statement and put his mark on this team early on. I think at free agency, I think his philosophy was, we're going to sign some unrestricted free agents on July 1st, but I only want to sign guys to 1-2-year deals at the most. I don't think he wanted to give any extended contracts because he didn't really know the organization. He wanted to see, what do we have here? Red Wings have a lot of draft picks. I want to get familiar with the Grand Rapids roster. I want to look at Michael Rasmussen as a player. I want to look at Joe Veleno. I'm aware of them, but I'm not really aware of them as far as the players that they are. So I think that, he started to make some moves. He brings in, Val Fupala, Patrick Nemeth, who turned out to be a really good one, and Calvin Pickard, in goalie. He was trying to shore everything up. So I think, the moves, he was proactive. He made a lot of trades. He trades Athanasiou. I just think overall, I think it was a learning year for him, but I think you saw the type of general manager that he is actually going to be here in Detroit. He is more than willing to take a chance, baptism under fire, bring young players up if he thinks that they're ready. I think, Mo Seider was a big surprise to everyone. Where did he come from? But I think you can see that he has an eye for talent. He thinks out of the box. He's his own guy. So I like the direction of the Red Wings. I like what he did. I thought that this was a good first year. He's not perfect. There were some maybe mistakes made along the way, but overall, I think he had a pretty good year. I think he had a learning year, and I'm eager to see what he does next.
Let's take a look at really, I want to highlight one of the trades that he made throughout the season. You talked about dealing Andreas Athanasiou, which was, in retrospect, it was a move that I think was really good. They got the draft picks that they needed for that. But one trade that really immediately impacted the Red Wings was the trade for Robbie Fabry with St. Louis. And Fabry came in, and I think he had 2 goals in his first game as a Red Wing. And for the rest of the season, he played really well. And I think he may be a key component moving forward.
Well, it's the old adage, a change of scenery. Jacob De La Rose was a player the Red Wings got off waivers from Montreal. He was a grinder, defensive specialist. The Red Wings probably wanted to see a little more offensive upside from him. But to get Robbie Fabry, who, is a former #1 pick, a goal scorer, was accomplished, but had 2 major knee surgeries. For him to come back from that, I think you have to look at it and just think to yourself, what a great trade for the Red Wings. Fabry is going to be a top 6 forward here. He has a history. He knew a lot of guys in the room. He's teammates with Tyler Bertuzzi back in junior. They won the Memorial Cup together. He's familiar with Dylan Larkin. So he just fit right in. And I think that was, and he's a goal scorer. And let's be honest, the Red Wings need goal scorers. And Fabry came in, he scores 2. I believe they were both power play goals, which the Red Wings really need a lot of help in their special teams department. So I think Fabry's been a wonderful addition. I think that, he plays with a reckless abandon, and he's not the biggest guy, but I can remember talking to, Robbie about this. And he says, if I'm not playing engaged, if I'm not playing with an edge, then I'm not playing well. So, I think that we saw the full package. He's feisty. He can score. He's a great teammate. So that was a real good move for the Red Wings.
And Art, you touched on it briefly in your opening answer there. The Red Wings had a lot of movement with the Grand Rapids Griffins. There were guys like Dennis Chalowski. There were guys like Joe Hicketts, Giovanni Smith, and you can even throw Philip Zadina in that mix if you want to, but he really spent most of the season with the Red Wings. But what do you think that says about where the Red Wings are? Just the fact that they were kind of sending players to Grand Rapids, pulling players back up, and it was constant.
Well, I think it says a couple of things. One, there were quite a few injuries on the Red Wings this year, as we know. Losing Danny DeKeyser was absolutely huge, but it also says that there is depth within the organization. I know I'm going to touch upon this with Ryan Martin, but I think there were like 95 transactions of players between Detroit and Grand Rapids this year. And Grand Rapids, because of Toledo and just they even had more than that, but with specifically Detroit, if you look at it. So I think, again, it goes back to what Yzerman was always saying is that if you acquire enough draft picks and hit on some, you're going to have depth. And I think that that's exactly what we're seeing right now. The Red Wings have players down there. Joe Veleno is an NHL player. Michael Rasmussen is an NHL player. Joe Hicketts, he may be a player that comes back and forth in between, but he can play at the NHL level. We saw with Philip Hronek, who was here the whole time. Philip Zadina, who had a pretty good year in Grand Rapids, when he came up and he started to get his confidence and get a little bit stronger. I don't think Philip Zadina is going to be going anywhere. I think he's a top 6 forward on this team. So again, I like the direction, Daniella. You have to build, but you have to have depth. It's great to say that you're in a rebuild, but you need something to rebuild with and players. And it looks like the Red Wings are stockpiling some good players. And if they can get, if they luck out and get Lafreniere or Byfield, somebody that can be fast-tracked and make an impact and be maybe that player that the Red Wings need and really build upon, along with Dylan Larkin and Anthony Mantha and Hronek and, the Tyler Bertuzzi. I think they're in good shape.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the 2020 draft. You've mentioned it briefly there. The Red Wings, we know they're going to have a top 4 pick. We don't know exactly where they're going to be picking, but obviously we want them picking one, and the number 1 prospect is Alexis Lafreniere from the Q. He was the leading point scorer in the Q this year. What do you think of him as a prospect? And I mean, do you think he's a lock-in at that number 1 pick?
Yeah, from everything that I've heard, that he is definitely the lock to be picked number 1. You would have to get your head examined if you didn't take him. I think that there would be outrage, in the entire hockey community if he wasn't picked after that. And then when you look at it, you have Drysdale, the defenseman, Quentin Byfield supposed to be number 2, and then Tim Stutzel or Stutzel, who plays on the same team that Mo Seider played on last year back in Germany. I mean, they're considered to be the consensus top 4. A player that I get asked a lot about is, because I'm kind of a little bit of a goaltending freak, is Yaroslav Askarov, the young Russian goaltender. Even if the Red Wings were to take him somehow, or maybe Steve takes a couple of those second-round picks to move up in the draft, and this is all speculation. I have no idea what they're going to do, but it maybe gets in the mid-first rounds and Askarov's still there. Maybe he takes him. I don't know. I know that the Red Wings like him, but at this point they're going to go. I think they want a high-end forward who can score, and and I think even though Lafreniere, but he's so good as a winger, Byfield might be the guy that they would look at if they don't get the number 1 pick. But if they don't get second, if they fall down the 4th, I think it's going to be the Jamie Drysdale, the defenseman, or it's going to be Tim Stutzel, the forward from Mannheim in Germany. Either way, it looks like these top 4 picks are a cut above everybody else. So they're going to get a good hockey player. Some might be more NHL ready than others, like Lafreniere. And the other ones may take a year or 2. But anyway you look at it, when the draft is over, and whenever that is, they're going to get themselves a really good high-end quality hockey player. I think one that's going to have a lot of offensive upside, and that's exactly what they need. Even on the blue line, even Drysdale's considered to be a number 1 D who can run a power play and, is kind of in the mode of, shall I say, a Quinn Hughes or somebody, or Cale Makar, one of those kind of guys, and obviously you can never have enough defensemen. So I think, hopefully the hockey gods are good to Detroit, but I think we all know with the way the lottery has gone for the Red Wings, they're going to end up picking 4.
Well, Art, aside from that first round pick, and I don't like that attitude, we're going to have some luck in this one, okay? And we're going to get the first overall pick. But aside from that pick, I know you are. But like I said, aside from that pick, the Red Wings have acquired quite a few picks in this draft. They've got 3 second-rounders and 2 third-rounders. And we know that Steve Yzerman has a pretty good draft history. He drafted Nikita Kucherov in the second round in Tampa Bay. So there is some hope to hit on those picks as well.
Well, without question. I think that, it's nice to talk about the number 1 guys, and we spend a lot of time on that, and rightly so. But where you build your team and where you're successful is your later round draft picks. And the Red Wings really have been really one of the forerunners in picking guys. Look where they got Datsuk. Look where they got Zetterberg. Jonathan Ericsson was Mr. Irrelevant, the last player taken in this draft class, and has been a Red Wing for 12 years. So, look at Darren McCarty. Bertuzzi, they traded up a little bit, but these guys were not number 1 picks, yet they were very instrumental in the Red Wings and what they were able to do and what they were able to accomplish. So I think, Steve has gone a lot. He and his scouting staff, he goes over to Europe. He's checking out on prospects that the Red Wings already have, but he's looking for hockey players. So, and I think, look no further than what he did last year with Mo Seider. Now, Mo Seider was a player that was moving up the ranks. I follow this stuff, and I really get into it in September. September of 2018, I started looking at the draft for 2019. And Mo Seider was consistently the one player that each month when they would reevaluate them was moving up. And I think by the time his draft class, by the time the draft rolled around, he was 14th overall, right around in there. And people thought he might go anywhere from like 14 to 20 or something, all the pundits. But I firmly believe, and I told Steve this actually, that if it would have been held the draft a year or a month later, he would have been in the top 10. I think he would have moved up that much just based on what he was able to do with Mannheim. So when he drafted him 6th, even though there was a gasp in Vancouver, in the whole arena, who is this guy? Whoa, look at Yzerman. Well, you know what? That's how you build championship teams. That's how you're a cut above the rest. So, yeah, I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking for sure I can't wait to see these guys in the second and third round. They have a lot of picks. I think 5 or 6 picks in the top 100 or whatever it is. Those are all pretty good hockey players. I want to see, last year, even though he ran the draft beginning in April, this was the first time, more because of player availability, that the Red Wings did not draft one player from the Canadian Hockey League, which comprises the Ontario League, the Western League, and the Quebec League. They never did. They was heavy on Europeans, but Tomisto looks like, this kid, he's a defenseman of the year in his league, and player of the year, MVP in his league. So, again, Steve knows what he's doing. He just knows what he's doing. And, and he's, I joke around with my friends. They say, what's it like with Steve Yzerman? Because they know that I've known him for a long time. And I said, let's put it this way. If they're not competing for a Stanley Cup in 4 or 5 years, I mean, legitimate top end, like the Red Wings that we're kind of used to seeing, he's going to die trying, and he's going to take us all with him, because I mean, that's the intensity, that's the commitment, that's the talent that he has for the eye for talent. And just that, he is not going to stop until the Red Wings are turned around.
Well, if that didn't get you amped up for the Red Wings future, I don't know what will. Art, you might need to get in the locker room and a couple speeches.
Could you imagine me going into the room and addressing the fellas? You know, I could see them all like
yeah.
taking their jockstrap and even them here. Just shut up, get out of here, Blash. Why would you do this? Get Regner out of here.
Oh man. Big thank you to our friends at Labatt Blue for sponsoring the Downtown Hockeytown segment every week on the Word on Woodward. And now we're going to switch gears a bit here, Art, and we're going to start talking some Tigers for our Brush Street Beat segment. And for this one, we're going to bring in Dan Dickerson to chat with us. So I'm really excited to chat with Dan. I've actually never had him as a guest on the show, so this is going to be really exciting. Guys, look at that. Dan Dickerson, ready and joining us. Dan, how you doing?
Great, Daniella. How are you? Art, good to see you coming out of your shell a little bit.
Yeah, well, thank you there, Double D. It's always great to see you. I enjoy you and Double Wow on the Tiger broadcast, and yeah, I've known Double D, or Dan Dickerson, I guess Dan, I should say, for a long time. It's great to have you on. You do a great job with the Tigers, and I'm really looking forward to your sit down with Cameron Maben.
I have to say, Art, I loved your story about Sergei Fedorov, the backstory of that. I knew a little bit of it, but that really was good.
Well, thank you. You know, I mean, I've kind of obsessed with I guess Sergei, and you know, I don't know, you know, I guess people might say that about Steve Yzerman because I won't shut up about him today. But you know, Sergei, I always thought, and you know, Dan, you were around, you've covered the teams for a long time. I thought that he was a little bit misunderstood, but when you really got to know him, he was just a really good, decent man and a tremendous hockey player.
Yeah, he sure was. Those are fun years to cover, that's for sure.
Well, without question, I long for those days. I was much younger.
I'm hoping that I get the chance to cover some of these great memories that you guys get to talk about. So I'm patiently awaiting my turn, okay?
It'll come.
Oh, yeah.
And Dan,
be patient, Danielle. Go ahead, Dan.
I will be. That's okay. As Art mentioned, Dan, you got to sit down with Cameron Maben earlier this week. So let's take a look at that interview.
As we continue our weekly interviews during this suspension of the Major League Baseball season, it's our pleasure to have a chance to chat with one of our favorites. Cameron Maben is joining us from his home in Asheville, North Carolina. Cameron, how are you? I wish I was seeing you at the ballpark right now, but it's great to see you. How's everything?
Yeah, Dan. Likewise, you know, things are as good as they can be. You know, definitely enjoying my family. But I can't say it enough how much I wish I was playing baseball right now. So this is a tough time right now.
What I want to go, but before we talk about kind of how you're occupying your day and some of the things you're doing to stay sharp, I'd like to go back to spring training just because I thought there were so many good things going on in the spring. Having you back was a lot of fun. You were a late signing in the off season. What was it like, first of all, being back with the team that originally drafted you all those years ago for a third time?
Yeah, it's just it's one of those things that, you know, it feels right. You know, it felt right. You know, the relationship that I have with the Detroit community, the Tiger organization. You know, I always feel like, you know, a lot of people in that organization, you know, helped mold me and, you know, at the beginning of my career taught me how to be a professional. So I am, you know, extremely grateful to the Tigers organization, extremely grateful that I was drafted by an organization who, you know, at the time had so many veterans to teach me, you know, how to be a professional, how to be, you know, a big leaguer. And to do it for a third time, you know, it means a lot to me. You know, it lets me know what they think about my character. You know, something that I, you know, take a lot of pride in is, you know, how people respect you as a person, not just an athlete. So, you know, for you know, the Illages to have me back, for, you know, Al to want to see me back, for the coaching staff to want me to be a part of this. You know, I was super excited, you know, and super bummed at the same time because, you know, you were really getting that feel of kind of, you know, seeing what we kind of have stirring in the pot, you know, and it's some pretty nice ingredients, I like to call it.
I thought that kind of the two big things, my takeaways from the spring training at the time it was shut down, the impact that the young kids had on kind of the excitement level, if you will, the Mises and Mannings and Scoobles, not to mention some of the younger players, the position players, Willie Castro, and I know Isaac Paredes was hurt, but Travis Demerit had a big spring. They just seemed to add an element of excitement. And the other thing was the impact that the 5 veteran free agents had on the young players. You talked about you being mentored earlier in your career. Talk about some of the things that, because it seemed like you and Scope and Crone and Romine and Nova, all in your own way, were making an impact in that whole key area of mentoring younger players. Talk about some of the things that you enjoyed and some of the younger players you enjoyed having conversations with, because they were taking place every day.
It was, and it was really weird to be on the other spectrum of it. I've been on that end when I was the young guy, all open ears and wide-eyed and wanting to get any piece of advice that I could. And, to be on the other end of it now, I think the Tigers have done a great job of putting together some very talented guys, but guys who want to learn, guys who are eager to listen and hear and learn from, the guys that, we brought in this year. And I think for the guys that we brought in, we were not there last year, but it's a different feel already. It's a different feel, a group of veteran guys who allow guys to be themselves as well. You got to kind of have that, big brother feel, kind of, smack them on the behind when they mess up, but also allow, but keep them confident and allow them to know that, it's a part of it. And we still want them to be themselves, and if we're going to mess up, go, mess up doing it the right way. But just the chemistry, I think even the 6 guys, and then, even having Jody Mercer, who was there, who's a veteran guy who brings so much leadership, who, he brings so much to the table from his personality. So when you add, the 6 guys that they brought in and, and then you got Miggy, who is, we all saw what he looked like. We all saw him back, he was smiling. He was, feeling good. When you feel good, it does something different to you as well. So, even when you got that exuberant Miggy along with those pieces.
And then you got Riley Green, who knows, he may not be that far away either, but last year's 5th overall pick. And he ended up getting as many plate appearances as some of the regulars in spring training, and all he did was get on base every time, it seemed like. He and Parker Meadows are both intriguing in different ways. Riley Green clearly is a little more advanced, but Parker Meadows, everybody raves about his talent and talent level. Anything that kind of struck you? And I'm going to throw Cody Clemens in there too, because he ended up coming over a lot from the minor league camp. Just those 3, just because I think they've kind of gotten lost, or at least 2 of those have gotten a little bit lost among the talk about some of the other ones. All
3 impressed me a ton. And again, even those young guys coming over from the other side, asking questions. If it wasn't me, it was, some other guy who had some time and had some experience. And, and then watching them go out and just be confident and just play with that just freeness and that willingness to just be ready to compete. It was fun watching all 3 of those guys. Riley Green, he has something that you cannot teach. You can't teach just that ball to bat, hand-eye coordination, that ability to put the barrel on the baseball. He's a guy that you can just tell he'll be able to do that when he's, an old man, which is years to come. But that's a gift, a gift that you pray for and you hope for when you're a baseball player.
So Cameron, I'm assuming you just right now, like most everybody else, just trying to stay fit, be ready as much as possible, and hope for the best.
Yeah. Right now, working out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. My trainer put together a really nice gym in his garage. I mean, he gutted his garage, built a nice gym. So it's just myself, my 12-year-old getting some training in with me. I'm hitting with my 12-year-old 3 or 4 times a week. We're actually about to go play long toss after this. After we get off of here. So, I'm getting my work in. Trying to just stay at it. Trying to mentally stay ready and prepared for baseball and for playing this season. At the end of the day, I don't want to be caught by surprise. And it's a part of just trying to stay optimistic, and positive that we're going to get something going.
What's your son's name?
His name is Trent. He's 12, so he's on the travel ball scene, and he loves the game, and he loves it. He's my mini me. So
I don't want to keep you any longer than you go play some long toss with Trent and have a great time. We thank you so much for your time, Cameron. It's been great chatting with you.
Dan, I appreciate it. And also just want to say one thing. Prayers and wishes goes out to the K-Line family. You know, that man was nothing but great to me. You know, I was just, you know, happy that I was able to spend some time with him this spring. And his memory will, you know, be long, long remembered. And we just want to send our prayers and our wishes out to the K-Line family and let Al know he will be forever, forever missed.
That's a very nice sentiment. He really had an ability to connect with players of all generations, didn't he?
Absolutely, man. His smile, literally was just looking at some pictures today, and I was just like, the man's smile. I got goosebumps just now. He just has such an infectious smile and an infectious personality. I mean, even this spring, you know, he came up to me this spring and, you know, asked me how I was feeling. And I was like, you know, Al, just my time is a little off. He always, you know, called me Cammy. He goes, Cammy, he goes, I'm not worried about you, son. He told me, he goes, as long as I've known you, when it's time to go, you're always ready. And I, you know, just like the little things that this man, after all that he's accomplished, you know, he still was aware of the guys that were around and playing. And, you know, he still cared. You know, he cared about the next guys up in this generation and wanted us to all be great. So, you know, I'm just very, very thankful I had the opportunity to be in his presence and, you know, call him a friend.
No, that's great. Cameron, thanks again. All the best to you. Hope to see you at the ballpark at some point in the not too distant future.
All right, Dan, you take care.
Another great Al Kaline memory. Like I said, I love hearing these. But Dan, one thing I really liked about Cameron Maben's interview there is he talked about the chemistry and the interactions between the veterans and the younger guys. From what you saw of spring training, what do you have to say about the chemistry of this team?
Well, and it's always easy to say, well, it was going to be better after a 47-win season. But anybody who's followed sports, it's endlessly fascinating for me. You guys have covered plenty of teams, how the pieces fit together every year. And through baseball history, there certainly has been many instances of guys who just kind of keep showing up, veterans who kind of heading toward the end of their career, but they keep showing up. And what's the common theme? They keep showing up on winning teams. And sometimes just that one little piece, whether it's a Carlos Beltran at age 40 with the Houston Astros, everybody agreed he had a huge impact on that team. Eric Hinsky kept bouncing around for years, but he was a common thread on many playoff teams. How the pieces fit together, always fascinating. And I'm always interested in how the older generation passes on the knowledge to the younger generation for all of the changes that there have been in how we develop players and how we use technology. There are still some things about the game that remain true generation to generation. That's why Al Kaline still made a big impact on the younger players, because he still had advice and he still saw things and had ideas about how you can get better. Even as the game changes, some things are still the same. So I just loved how the pieces were coming together. I thought those veterans added a lot. Last year, I think it was 70% of all plate appearances were by players with 2 years of major league experience or less. I mean, it was a lot of inexperience, and it just kind of fed on each other in a bad way sometimes. And that's where the veterans, I think, this year are when we get the chance to play, they're going to show that they'll help calm things down a little bit. And I think that's big. And I think they're going to add a lot. The guys that we mentioned, the Scope, Crone, Maben, Romine, Jordy Mercer. I'm glad he mentioned Jordy Mercer because I think he was going to make the team. Those guys are all going to add a lot. Ivan Nova, you know, the numbers aren't great, but to have a steady veteran like that who you can count on for 33 starts a year, that does make a difference. And I think he was adding a lot for the young pitchers who are not that far away. So I'm always fascinated by the learning that goes on, the knowledge that gets passed on generation to generation, and how the pieces fit together, because every year is different.
Well, Dan, I hope soon enough that we're seeing some baseball being played and we get to see how those pieces are going to fall together this season. And thank you so much for joining the Word on Woodward. And I know that we will be having you back very, very soon.
Great to chat with you, Daniella. Art, great to see you always, bud.
Hey, you're my favorite, Double D. Don't tell Ken Cal.
I won't. He'll never know.
Thanks again. Another shout out to our partner
Take care.
at McLaren. for bringing us the Brush Street Beat. And we're going to do that every Tuesday and Thursday here on the Word on Woodward. And for this next segment, this is going to be our headliner interview where Art sits down with somebody that we really want you guys to hear from. And this week, today, it is going to be Ryan Martin, the Assistant General Manager of the of the Detroit Red Wings and General Manager of the Grand Rapids Griffins. Today's interview is presented by Miller Lite.
Welcome back to the Word on Woodward. Time now for the headliner, presented by Miller Lite. And let's bring in our guest, the Assistant General Manager of the Red Wings, the General Manager of the Grand Rapids Griffins, and a consultant to the Toledo Walleye. He has all his bases covered, Ryan Martin. Ryan, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate your time. First and foremost, how are you holding up?
Well, thanks for having me. First of all, Art, appreciate it. We are very healthy, thankfully. My wife and kids, we've spent an awful lot of time together the last 5 weeks. My kids, as all kids in the area, their school's been canceled, but they're doing online schooling, which has been a challenge at times. My daughter likes the flexibility, which is nice. So it's great. We've gotten some time to spend together, and we've been busy on the hockey side, that's for sure.
I'm under the impression, because everything was just halted, and whether or not the league comes back, the AHL and the NHL, will this have any impact on player development? Because depending on where these players are now on the globe someplace, that they may not have ice. I mean, they're trying to work out. I know you've given them programs. Could this be a step back for some of the players, the Red Wing fans, the young guys that they're looking forward to someday step into the lineup here in Detroit?
Well, we hope not. And Sean Horkoff, Dan Cleary, Nick Cronwall, Brandon Naurato, they've all been involved not only in the player exit meetings, but they've had a whole nother round of one-on-one meetings with all of our players prior to this week to talk about that very issue. Certainly our sports science department, led by Mike Barwis, and our group in Detroit and Grand Rapids, they were able to furnish our players not only with off-ice workouts that one can do without any equipment, but some guys have access to limited equipment or maybe a small gym or a home gym. We talked to a couple players yesterday who live in different parts of the world where they do have access to gyms. Everybody's on a different sort of shutdown mode, and some of the players do have access. So our ability to provide them the resources in anything from a limited to a full capacity, and the importance of maintaining a regular timeline for these guys, we think it's actually an advantage. Sean and Dan and Nick and the player development people, the message that they've been sending the players is, we think this is an advantage that you can get started with your off-season training sooner rather than later. It's too bad that Grand Rapids is not playing playoff games right now as the American League normally would, but for those players that are down there, we see it as an advantage for them to start their off-season training.
It seemed to be kind of a dicey situation this year, because you want Grand Rapids to be in the playoffs. You want those young guys to experience a playoff run, yet you may want them to come up to Detroit. How difficult was it to decide who comes up, who doesn't come up?
The underlying interest is what is in the player's best interest, both from a short and long-term development plan. And, when you weigh those factors and you look at how many minutes the player is going to play in the American League versus the NHL, what situations is the player going to play in at both levels, and, to a lesser degree, the impact it would have on the minor league team if you recall them. But at the end of the day, we're doing what's best for the Detroit Red Wings. And certainly in the back of our mind, we're aware of what taking a guy like Mo Sider out of Grand Rapids would have done late in the year. But at the end of the day, we've got to make sure it's in the best interest of the Red Wings.
I would imagine you have to be pretty pleased with the season that Grand Rapids was putting together, because it was such a herky-jerky season.
From early November on, it was 6 teams in our division competing for 2 spots, which when everybody was competitive, Manitoba, San Antonio, Rockford, Chicago, ourselves. And that's great because, as you know, the American League, it's a divisional league. You play a ton of games against teams in your division. We would go on 12, 13 game stretches where all we were playing was games in our division. Then you'd go pop out and play the odd game outside your division and then come back in and go on another 10 or 12 game run. So the good thing about that is you can make up ground quickly in the American League if you happen to lose some ground. The bad thing is teams can make up ground on you quickly, even if you have a lead. So I think it's a phenomenal development model because what it does is it's a playoff game every night. And that's really what it was like, when we bus into Rockford and have to come home and play Chicago Friday, Saturday, back to back. These are all mini playoff games because these points are so important and the teams are all fighting for it in what is, I think, one of the top two divisions in the American League. So, I'm really happy with the year down there. And Steve and Pat Verbeek and I are pleased with how the players were developing, and the coaches did a phenomenal job of utilizing the young players in important situations and having patience with their development and some of the mistakes that they were making and being good teachers at the same time. So I think there's a lot of positives to come from this year. Even if we don't resume playing at the American League level, there's definitely a lot of positives to take from the year we had.
Ryan, I want to ask you about a couple of the prospects that played for Grand Rapids this year, maybe a quick assessment, and then I want to ask you maybe a general question because I can go on forever. I could talk to you all day, and especially being cooped up. But I know we're under a bit of a time limit here. But Mo Sider, I remember talking to you at the Summer Showcase in Plymouth this year, where you were a little bit apprehensive. You knew he could probably play in the AHL, but it's kind of the second best league in the world, a very physical league, and you were afraid that maybe, not afraid, but apprehensive that guys might take runs at him, but yet he, I would imagine, has exceeded everyone's expectations. He dished it out, he took it, and he was a huge contributor, played a lot of minutes for the Griffins.
Yeah, I think you summed it up well. And, first of all, he's coming from a men's league over in Germany, and I think his talent level is such that we felt his adjustment to the American League would be smoother in certain areas of his game. We certainly felt his hockey sense and skating and talent level was appropriate to play at that level. But to your point, it's a tough league, and it's a league of men, and it's a rough league, and young guys can get taken advantage of at times. And, I think moving from the bigger ice to the smaller ice, also there's a period of adjustment in terms of time and space and how long a player has to make plays, and they've got to get used to that. So I think there was a couple of small growing pains early. He quickly adapted. He did very well. I mean, I think for an 18-year-old to come into that league and to put up 22 points in 49 games and to show, basically almost week to week or day to day improvement is really exciting to see. I mean, he had a tremendous year. The coaches did a great job of utilizing him in important situations, down by a goal, couple minutes to play, up by a goal, couple minutes to play, protect the lead. Penalty killing came along. He got power play time and was running one of the power play units at the end of the season. So, he did some really good things in terms of his development. I think my personal view is that it was a phenomenal year of development, and we couldn't have asked for much more in terms of the progress that he made and the maturation in his game.
Center is a position of need for the Red Wings, as most fans know. I want to ask you about a couple of guys that were down in GR. And first one up would be Joe Veleno, very young player. He qualified to be in the AHL because he had exceptional status in the Quebec League, meaning he played at 15. So he had 4 years in the Quebec League, or the Canadian Hockey League, the CHL. So he was eligible to play. He came in, some growing pains, but since the World Junior Tournament, where he was part of Canada's gold medal winning team, he seems to finally hitting his stride a bit.
Yeah, and again, I'd agree with that assessment too. We were young down the middle in Grand Rapids. Dominic Turgeon is a veteran player, but really we had Michael Rasmussen, Joe Valeno, and Chase Pearson. So the great thing for our young centers in the organization was that they got to play a lot of minutes and in a lot of important situations. And that certainly holds true for Joe. So a credit to the coaches again. They put him in an important role to start the year. They integrate him into the penalty kill. And Dom Turgeon's one of the best penalty killers and defensive forwards in the American Hockey League. And oftentimes, Joe rode shotgun with him as a 1-2 pair in terms of penalty killing. And Dom did a really good job mentoring him. So that was great to see. And you're right. I was at the World Junior, so I saw Joe play firsthand, and he definitely took another step when he came back. His confidence was a little bit higher. His ability to make plays was greater. He was stronger. So not only did I think Joe utilize his experience in the American League to have a real successful World Junior, which he helped Canada win gold, but vice versa, he also took the experience that he garnered at the World Junior and brought it back to the American League. And I think he was, really hitting his stride when the season ended. He's having a really good year.
Michael Rasmussen, I know, wanted to play center. He was up in Detroit last year for the whole season because he would have had to get sent back down to junior to his club in the Western League. So he was a Red Wing all year. He went down to learn the center position. He started out very, very well, had some back injuries, nagging injuries yet. I've always said the most impressive thing about Michael Rasmussen for me is, for a man his size, his hand-eye coordination in front of the net is absolutely extraordinary. I know the injury was a bit of a setback, but it looked like he is really embracing that role of becoming a center at the NHL level.
Right. Yeah. And it's too bad that, the rules precluded us from sending him to the American League last year, because he probably could have used some more seasoning at that level. We felt like he was in sort of an in-between phase in his development, and we felt playing at the professional level would do more for his development in the long term than going back to junior. That's just, one of the facts of players in that situation. So this year it wasn't necessarily a bad thing for him to go down and play. And you're correct. I think his first, I think he had about 8 points in his first 9 or 10 games, and he was playing very well, playing primarily at center, getting time on the power play, and then a lingering injury kind of slowed him down. And I think he was pushing to get back sooner, and he really wasn't 100% healthy till a much later point in the year. So it's been a challenge for him in the middle part of the year to deal with that injury and to play as many minutes as we needed him to play down there to help with his development. But we feel he's in a good spot. I think he's healthy now. I think he felt good about his game. 22 points in 35 games. It's basically a little under half a season. So to be on pace as a 21-year-old with, about 44, 45 points at that level is really good. And to your point, he does an exceptional job in front of the net on the power play. He's a big man. He knows how to hold on to pucks down low. And we don't have a ton of size in the lineup down there. So he certainly filled that void very well.
I know there's several other players, Ryan. I'll have to save that for the next time. But overall, it does sound like, from talking to you, that as uncertain as the times are, it appears the Red Wing organization is trying to maintain business as usual as much as you can.
Yeah, for sure. I talked to some agents around the league and other executives on other teams, and I think a lot of teams are operating similar to how we are. But I almost feel like I'm glad I don't have my 45-minute commute each way, because I might not get all my work done every day. I'm pretty busy, and I think that's how everybody's treating this. And we're trying to stay busy and trying to stay focused, and the days are going by quicker, and hopefully it's only a matter of time before we're back playing hockey.
Ryan Martin, Assistant General Manager of the Red Wings, General Manager of the Griffins, and consultant to the Toledo Walleye. Thank you for joining us on the Headliner presented by Miller Lite. I do appreciate it, Ryan. It's always great to catch up with you. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll talk to you again very, very soon. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Art. You too. Take care.
Thanks again to our friends at Miller Lite for that Headliner interview with Ryan Martin and Art. That was a great interview. One thing that I found interesting that you guys talked about was how is this pause and this shutdown going to affect some of our young players and Red Wings prospects? And I like the optimism out of Ryan Martin saying that he hopes that it isn't going to set them back, but not being able to skate and work out on a regular regimen has to be a pretty difficult situation for these guys.
Well, certainly. I think you're right. Like if the AHL is on a pause right now, and so is the NHL, as we know. All the reports, regardless of when they do come back and how they come back, players are going to need 2 to 3 weeks just to get their legs back. And not many of them. There are certain parts of the world, and maybe even a few states in the United States that have rinks open, but for the most part, everyone is shut down. I thought what was really interesting, and that was a good point, Daniella, is that he thinks it might benefit them because they're able to get into their off-season routine quicker, except the skating part, which is obviously big. So I think that they've looked at it and they thought, what the heck, here's what you need to do. So where I thought maybe it would take a step back, where these players would take a step back because they're not in a routine and they don't have ice for the most part. Ryan said, no, we're pretty good with this, and obviously the Red Wings know what they're doing. Steve came in and revamped everything as far as, everything in the organization, put, some of his own people in. And so they had a plan. They've been shooting for this. They obviously know what development does. Sean Horkoff, Danny Cleary, Brandon Naurato, a former University of Michigan hockey player, had to get that in. I think that they know what they're doing, and I think Horkoff, who really kind of stepped right out of the NHL as a player into his role in player development, is on the cutting edge, and Sean knows what he's doing. And this is for you, Daniella, Michigan State hockey player, by the way. But Horkoff knows what he's doing. Dan Cleary made a seamless transition as well. And so I think as far as player development goes, I think the Red Wings are in really, really good shape. And I'm eager to see, and you don't have to look any further than Grand Rapids to see, even though like Ben Simon and his staff do a great job down there. I don't want to forget the Toledo Walleye, because Dan Watson and his staff also do a great job down there in Toledo, and it's a great place to go see a game. I urge everybody, when the Walleye come back, go down there. They do a great job. But my point being is that the Red Wings have a system in place. Player development is the least of my worries right now. And you can see that Michael Rasmussen, who wanted to play center, has made strides. Valeno has made strides. I know that Horkoff and his staff, even though Ben Simon does a majority of the coaching and is doing a wonderful job there, but they have an itinerary. They keep in contact with these players. They keep in contact with all their prospects all over the world. And I think it's going to pay off.
Always great to hear from Ryan Martin. Our great interview there, thanks to our friends at Miller Lite. But now it's time to socialize, thanks to our friends at AAA. For this segment, we're going to bring in Carley Johnston, because there is no way that we could socialize without her. And I know that she's going to have a little bit of a head start on us, Art, because she's been interacting with the fans on some of the various streaming platforms. Carley, how's that been going for you today?
Good. Hey, Ken. Hey, Art and Daniella. I've been following the stream on all channels, chatting with fans on Twitch, especially. The fans are loving the content we're providing right now. Happy to hear everyone is staying at home and staying safe. But I had to note my favorite comment was by a fan on Twitch who wanted to talk about Art's, quote, kitty city in the background. Art, I understand you have a couple of cats. You want to talk about them?
Well, yeah, actually, I've had animals my whole life, growing up as a child, and doing what I did for a long time. Cats were much easier obviously when you go out on the road and stuff and cover teams and long hours than a dog. And so, and I thought back then when I was younger, it's a great way to meet girls. What woman will not say, "Hey, I'm going to go out on a road trip for a couple of days. Can you watch my cat?" And it's like 10 out of 10. Oh yeah, sure. Oh, you like cats, but I'll save that for later. But I guess my point being is that, yeah, I have 3 right now, all rescue. At one time we had 7. But the elder statesman is Sergey. I named a cat after Sergey Fedorov, which again is another interesting story because Sergey Fedorov talked in the third person. He'd always say, "Sergey, do this, Sergey, do that." So sometimes Sergey would come up to me and go, "How's Sergey doing?" And I'd say to him, "I don't know. How are you doing?" Because he always talked to himself. There he go, "No, the cat, you idiot, the cat. How's the cat doing?" Anyway, the 3 cats that I have right now, Emilio, who was wandering the streets of Westland, Michigan, as a kitten, him, and then Buddy, who was part of a big brood of cats that we found in the backyard, and then Reba, who I found as a kitten. And the reason she's called Reba, I know this is just fascinating content, by the way, the reason she's called Reba, the entire show, I'm a Survivor. This cat was a very little kitten who came out of my garage one day out of nowhere. And so, grabbed her and trying to think of a name. And she's a little survivor. As a matter of fact, I think she's an alien. I don't even think she's from this planet. I don't know where she came from. She's a very odd cat. So yeah, they definitely make good use of the cat castle in the back. I have my Leonard Cohen album there. You got to have art bumper sticker from the DIA. As you both know, I volunteer at the Detroit Institute of Arts and gallery services. So yeah, definitely. That's the they're not in here, or they would be. Especially Emilio, who is a bit of a ham. If he knew that he could get FaceTime and he could talk to his 2 favorites, Daniella and Carley, he would be here meowing up a storm. But I shut the doors on him, and so I'm surprised you can't hear him kind of banging to get in. But yeah, that's the story of the Cat Castle. New one though. This thing's been around for a while, and at one time 7, it got a lot of work.
Art, you are a good cat dad. Let me just say, I have a cat myself, so I love to see the kitty castle in the background. But we have some questions from all platforms. First question is for you, Daniella. I know it's really hard to answer, so sorry for this tricky question. There are so many deserving players, but on Facebook, AC Clark wants to know which Red Wings player will have his jersey retired next.
This is a tough question because I think there are quite a few Red Wings players that are deserving of having their jersey number retired, but I'm going to go with number 40, Henrik Zetterberg. I think he should be the next one. Retired in 2018, and he played 1,000 games with the Red Wings, and he was a captain for a long time. And being a Red Wings captain means a lot. And he was crucial to the 2008 Stanley Cup Finals, and he won the Conn Smythe that year. And I don't even think I really need to continue to make the case. I just think that Henrik Zetterberg should be next.
I'd have to agree. He definitely embodies what a Red Wings player is. Okay, and now on to Art on Twitch. Hey, it's Common Gamer commented. Thoughts on how Lafreniere, Stützle, Byfield, and some other prospects can fit into the system? What is your take on that?
Well, I think whomever they get, as I said earlier, they're going to be a very they're going to be a contributing player. They're going to be a high-end and high-skilled player. I think that, Byfield is a big centerman, 6'5", can play 2 ways, has great offensive skill. I think that he would be given every opportunity to make the club next year. But the Red Wings, and I think as we just saw Ryan Martin say, they're going to do what's best for the Red Wings and also what's best for the players. So even though we're eager to see them, I think that you have to make sure that and emotionally ready too to handle the NHL. They're going to get physically better and stronger. And like Mo Sider, who was 18 now 19, he held up to the physical pressure of the AHL. So I think that's a factor that we also have to look at. Again, as I said, I trust the Red Wings. I think they know what they're doing in player development. So whatever is right. But he'll be given. Byfield is a very interesting guy. He's he's a big kid. As I said, a center which they really, really need, along with with Veleno. And another player I want to mention, and I know I'm jumping around a bit here. Don't sleep on Chase Pearson either. The former captain of the University of Maine, his first year pro. He looks like he could fit into that fourth line center very, very nicely. And then with Rasmussen and Veleno or Blyfield and and Dylan Larkin, obviously. I mean, the Red Wings, this center position could be shored up pretty quickly. Stutzel is a different player. He is another guy who has really come on. If you look at some of these draft services, he was always considered within the top 10. Now, some have him rated the second best player. I know Central Scouting has him rated the number one. The NHL Central Scouting is the number one player in Europe, right behind Lafreniere, who's the number one player in North America. So I think that when I look at NHL ready and guys who may make a contribution, and because, even though Stutzel can play center, they're both wingers, he and Lafreniere, I think that's a little bit easier position to learn at the NHL level, especially when you're that young. Byfield may take some more time. He's a little younger than the other two, and that, he may not be able to be the guy that, could step in right away unless, his talent warrants it. Then, of course, he'll step in. So I think that Lafreniere and Stutzel would be the guys that I think that could probably contribute to the Red Wings next year, just based on what what I've read and, some clips that I've seen. But I think both of them, I don't think they can go wrong. I think with whomever they draft in the top four, you could say if it's Lafreniere at 1 or whomever falls to them at 4 and everything in between 2 and 3, they're going to be, it's going to be a high-end player, a good quality player, a player that's going to have offensive upside. Even Jamie Drysdale, the defenseman, as I said earlier, has upside. So I think the draft looks good. I think that, and then, of course, as we alluded to earlier, too, then let's see the gems that the Red Wings are going to pick in the second and third round, because that they're going to find some players.
Definitely some great young talent coming up in the prospect pool. Also on social, let's touch on our teams a bit. The Detroit Tigers and Red Wings are also taking to social media to thank their partners who are shifting their normal productions to make hand sanitizers and PPEs during this pandemic. Everyone from Carhartt to Atwater Brewery and other businesses around Detroit are pitching in to help during this time, which is great to see Detroit coming together during this pandemic.
That is amazing. And I know Art and I kind of talked about that at the beginning of the show and highlighting what Matt Boyd and Ron Gardenhire did, but we're really seeing it throughout all of the different entities in Detroit, different businesses, all of our organizations, of course. It's just been great, like you said, Carly, to see everyone kind of banding together.
Absolutely. From the players to the higher ups, it's really great to see the community that Detroit has and that Hockey Town is and the Tigers fans. It's really good to see that.
Well, we can go on. I mean, you could just look at it. Carhartt is doing their part as always. GM is converting things, making masks, Marathon, New Balance. I mean, they're all rallying around here. And again, that's always been the vibe, though. That's always been the spirit when you look at Detroit. Whenever they had, like Labor Day telethons and all of that kind of stuff, Detroit is consistently, for a city that gets knocked a lot and has their fair share of problems, Detroiters are generous. And when I say Detroiters, I'm talking Southeastern Michigan too. We're all in this together. They help people out. And I think that, the people that are our partners are also Detroiters themselves. I just think it's just a natural progression. I am not surprised what our partners are doing and what the good people of Detroit and Southeast Michigan are doing as well. I mean, this is, as we keep saying, uncertain times, unprecedented times, any way you want to look at it. I've been through a lot in my life, some stuff that I will admit to, other things that I won't. But I will say this, I never thought in my life, and even though I knew it was a possibility, that I would live through a pandemic, that we would be, quarantined in our house, me with the cats, and it's just, it's just refreshing to see how people have banded together in the human spirit. And it does look like social distancing is really paying off. We seem to be, each day now the numbers are going down. Obviously, one death is too many. That's just terrible and tragic. But overall, it seems like we're on the right path, and that hopefully whatever, and I hate this expression, whatever the new normal is, it happens sooner rather than later. And not only do we have our partners to thank about it, but everybody, society as a whole, everybody here in South Michigan doing their job as usual. Not surprised by that.
Everyone's banding together. Can't wait to get back together at the arena, Little Caesars Arena, and at the ballpark, Miracle Park. It'll be great when we all can be together and watch the sport of hockey and baseball again.
Very well said, both of you. And Carley, thank you so much for joining us on that segment. And like Art was saying, we really thank everybody in the community. We thank all of our business partners for helping in any way that you can during this very difficult time. And I want to let you know that AAA thanks you by providing a 20% premium refund to auto insurance policyholders for April and May. No action required for all insurance. For AAA insurance customers to get the refund. Visit AAA.com/refund for details. Stay safe, stay at home, and save lives, everybody. Art, can you believe it has already almost been 2 hours and we're done with our first The Word on Woodward?
I can't believe it. I truly can't. I mean, it's flown by. I promise I'm going to try to calm down the next show. I think just a little bit, amp it down. I mean, I'm really excited to work with you, to work with Carley and everybody behind the scenes. I mean, this show was flawless today. I can't thank, I don't want to start naming names because I'm going to forget somebody, but you guys know who you are. They said, listen, all you're going to have to do is talk. And that's pretty much all I had to do for 2 hours, which I do enjoy doing. But I enjoy doing it, especially with you, Daniella, and Carley, and Double D, and I know Ken Cal, and I can't forget Dana Wakiji, my colleague, my partner in crime. But I am just thoroughly impressed with everybody, especially behind the scenes. You made my job easier. All I had to do, as I said, talk, and and obviously Daniella, the way you coordinate things, and working on the big screen show with you, it's just a pleasure, and I had a lot of fun.
I did too, Art. I'm so excited to be able to do this with you twice a week. And my cheeks hurt. I think that might be from your cat stories. You were great, though. You had a great show today. And I'm really excited, like I said, to do this twice a week with you.
Well, Emilio's going to be angry because he didn't make his camera debut today. So I'll probably have to have him, sitting in the back on Thursday's show.
Definitely. You'll have to bring him on next time. And a big thank you to everybody that tuned in to The Word on Woodward today. We've been working really hard, as Art mentioned, to get this show ready to go for you. But the excitement doesn't stop here. Right after we sign off here, you can join the Hockeytown Trivia game on the District Detroit app if you don't have it already. Download that app and you'll see the Hockeytown Trivia Bar. It starts right at 2 p.m. So as soon as we log off here, get over to the District Detroit app and we're going to stump you with some trivia. As I said before, thank you all so much for tuning in today. And Art and I will see all of you on Thursday.